Welcome back to another episode of the Three Man Weave College Basketball Podcast. Just Jim and Kai today as Matthew hangs out on an island called Bermuda. Beautiful countryside down there, Jim. He decided not to podcast from there. Commitment issues.
You have to wonder if Matt's really dedicated to preview season. Kai, this is typically our most enjoyable time to do pods, maybe behind the March Madness marathon when we really get into the bracket. I love preview season. I love talking about teams. This means in 7 months from now, when we do our Big East postmortem, we won't have any bad or good takes from Matthias Cox. That was a real bummer. He didn't write the Big East, so he's just going to be a mystery man on his Big East opinions. But hey, it's tough to turn down Bermuda, Bahama, come on pretty mama with the family.
Correct. Yes, it is, Jim. Okay, we'll soldier on without Matt. No big deal. We've done it before. We'll do it again. Welcome to the show, episode 370. Wow, so many episodes. We might hit 400 this year, maybe.
In
Possible.
30 weeks, theoretically.
30 weeks. Okay, we'll see. Yeah, that's probably not this year. Okay. Roots Roundup is how we're going to kick things off per usual, and then we're going to get into the conference previews. Like Jim said, it's the Big East where you're breaking down every single team. I'll give standings. This preview is live on burnerexclusives.com. That is the website we are using through the Discord to post all of our previews. Every single team will be there eventually. We have 4 conferences out right now, Jim, I believe. Big 12, Big East, ACC, and SEC.
We're up to 5, Kai.
Up to 5.
I believe all the power conferences are out. A10 coming on Friday. If you're listening to this on Friday, September 27th, A10 will be there.
And at least 3 more coming next week. They're rolling out hot and heavy, trying to get everything out before the season starts for you guys to get prepped. First, before we start, 3MW_CBB, Twitter and Instagram. Do follow us there, please. We are doing this show live on YouTube currently, right now. 7 a.m. Thursday is usually our time frame. It's kind of nice doing it before work, I'll be honest. Do subscribe, do like the channel there. It helps us out with findability. And then, yes, join the Discord. The Discord is where we're doing all of our college basketball content this season. We are chatting in there every single day. We are releasing exclusive previews. We're doing exclusive interviews with coaches. Jim just talked to Will Wade. I talked to Jerome Tang earlier this week. Some really, really cool interviews in there. Jim, I loved the Will Wade interview.
Yeah, it was great. Pretty hilarious contrasts and personalities between Mr. Wade and Mr. Tang. Doing those back-to-back days, very, very entertaining. Wade really got on a couple not tangents. Tangents is the wrong word, but he got a couple stances that he got passionate about, and it was very fun to hear that. He was a delight to talk to. Really easy interview. So yeah, get in there. There's some really good material in the Will Wade interview. Highly recommend it. It's worth the $6 alone.
Absolutely, and that's in there forever. That's recorded in there. You can download it whenever you want if you're a member. The link to that is in our Twitter bio. It's in this link to the podcast on YouTube and on iTunes/Spotify. So click the link, get in there. Mark Titus AMA is coming up. That'll be exciting on October 8th. Kentucky assistant Cody Fugger as well. Join. Okay, that does it. That's the intro. Let's get into Roots Roundup, some news and notes from college basketball.
Let's do it, Kai. Roots Roundup talking news and notes, as you mentioned. But first, a quick shout out to CBB Analytics, a wonderful sponsor of this podcast, something right in line with our interests. We are going through cbbanalytics.com for our previews, a lot of different data sets and stats to pull from there. It's the best 30,000-foot view of all of college basketball, every single team. It's super helpful for going through D2 teams or D2 transfers. We use it in all kinds of different ways. The shot charts and the on-off statistics are probably my go-to things for it. But you can look at lineup combinations. You can look at some of the more obscure stats. I know Kai's very big into Hakeem percentage in terms of steal and block rate, getting that in there. All kinds of different stuff. Coaching staffs use this over D1, over 25 D1 staffs used it last year. It's good enough for them. It's probably good enough for us, CBB hardos. And if you use promo code WEAVE at sign up, you get $40 off your subscription, basically a free month. Dive in there with that free month, figure out what you like, what you don't like. There's all kinds of different things to look at. Absolutely worth it. And coaches, if you're listening to us, reach out to us or Nick directly, get you set up, get you the pro subscription. That's all kind of in-depth detail. It's the best. All kinds of great details on cbbanalytics.com. Promo code weave at sign up. All right, Kai, we should just rename key headlines to realignment murmurs, mumbles and murmurs. Utah State is headed to the Pac-12, joining Oregon State, Washington State, Colorado State, Boise State, San Diego, or not San Diego State yet, but just all the states are Pac-12. They're still one team short of an 8-team quorum to be considered a true conference for the NCAA tournament by the NCAA. But that's for football. Mountain West is not happy about all these teams leaving. And Kai, the big news maybe is the rumors, the heavy rumors of Gonzaga being involved with the Pac-12, potentially getting a full conference share monetarily, despite not having a football team. That is the incentive for the Zags to join. It's all a mess, Kai, and I think, as we usually say, just wake me when it's over, and I'll figure it out then.
Wake me when it's over, Jim. I guess they prefer to be called the Pac-12 and not the Mountain West. It's essentially the Mountain West. They're taking the best football schools from there, at least they're trying to. Whatever. This realignment irks me less because it's all on the West Coast, and it makes sense in terms of geography. We kind of expected this to happen, and I do kind of would like Gonzaga to get in a quote-unquote deeper, better league than the WCC. But I will miss, rivalries like St. Mary's and San Francisco and all that.
Yeah, and we're, as you mentioned, it's all on the West Coast. We're happy to see Memphis, Tulane, and I think even South Florida turn down Pac-12, the Americans staying strong. I laughed at the conference tweet, it's like 15 strong. It's like, relax, American. You lost the team like a year ago to the ACC. You just snapped up 6 teams from the CUSA. Don't act like you're some bastion of continuity. Just absurd. But the American is staying intact. The Pac-12 will look elsewhere. I'm sure they will hunt plenty of different schools to try to get that eighth team and even more into the Pac-12. All right, that's it for realignment. In recruiting news, Kai, I don't know if you caught this in the Discord, but a heated battle in the Hoosier State yesterday came to a head with 5-star combo guard Jalen Harrelson committing to Notre Dame.
Good.
And it set some Hoosier fans close to the edge of the cliff here. They were not thrilled about losing an in-state stud to a rival in the Irish. There's some real breaking down in the Harrelson reaction thread. I was laughing at it in the Discord. But yeah, I think this is maybe one more last straw for IU fans with Woodson. If nothing else, Kai, if he's not winning recruiting battles, then he's really on the hot seat heading into this year.
Woodson can't protect the borders, Jim. This is the IU fans' number one thing. Protect the borders. You got to get Indiana talent to come to Indiana. Happy for Shrewsbury. I believe it's their first 5-star ever at Notre Dame. Shrewsbury's a bit of a good coach, Jim. We love him.
Yeah, he rocks. Harrelson had his statement that was like, I trust him with my game.
I get it.
I get it. That's so important. That's the way it should be. But yeah, I mean, Indiana trying to protect the borders. The call's coming from inside the house. With Notre Dame also inside Indiana. So that's a problem. A couple others to mention here. Top 50 recruits. SMU got their highest rated recruit in over a decade, I believe. 4-star center Jaden Toombs. Nate Oates continues to roll at Alabama. Small forward London Jamison, a top 40 recruit headed there. Cincinnati and Virginia getting point guards. Keyshawn Tillery to Cincinnati, Chance Mallory to Virginia. Kyle, 5'9", listed as the new Kihei Clark, perhaps. Yes. I think he's a little more offensively gifted than Kihei.
Recreating the magic of Kihei Clark, your favorite player.
Well, I enjoyed his final moments at Virginia since I was on Furman Moneyline.
You could put it that way, yes.
Yeah. I also had Virginia national title the year they won. So yeah, I enjoyed his dramatic pass to Mamadi Diakite. There's a positive memory for you, Virginia fans. Trent Sisley did head to Indiana. Kai, 4-star power forward from Montverde. So, at least the Hoosiers got a consolation prize this week. And Illinois got a fringe top 100 guy. Brandon Lee, shooting guard, number 98 in the country per 24/7 Sports. Well done, Illini. Kai, that's all I got for news.
Wow.
We didn't have any big bomb drops of former ESPN writers taking GM jobs at their alma mater this week. So we can talk Big East.
Stephen A. Smith becomes the GM of insert.
Where'd he go to school?
I don't know, actually. Didn't he play at a smaller school? I thought he played basketball somewhere.
that sounds right. And probably got his stat line thrown in his face at some point. Like remember when LeVar Ball was like, oh, remember when you averaged 2 points a game, LeVar?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't like that Stephen A. Smith was a hooper. That doesn't sit well with me, Jim. I'm not a hot take artist. I'm a normal take artist, and that's why we're doing the Big East preview right now. We're going to give you normal to warm takes on the Big East, and maybe a couple hop ones. I snuck in I'd say a weird standing flop at the last minute here, but
Oh, I've got one for you too, Kai. I'm excited.
Okay. So once again, this preview is on the burnerexclusives.com site. It's live. We're going to go through the standings, all conference awards, and then we're going to dive into each team one by one. Jim and I will go back and forth. Matthew, who is wearing a Yoshi costume, will say nothing on the beautiful YouTube channel. And that's how we're going to take things. You guys might remember this from last year. We did this for every conference. We're going to do it again. So here are my standings per the burnerexclusives.com preview on the site. Tiered, of course, as we like to do. Tier 1, UConn, number 1. Yep, national champs twice in a row. Creighton 2, Marquette 3, Xavier 4, St. John's 5. That is Tier 1. Tier 2. Yes, Jim?
Can I ask quick? Did you have any thought to separating anyone from that tier? Because I did, and I decided not to, like you.
I thought about putting UConn on their own tier, Jim.
Okay, we'll discuss why we didn't shortly. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Okay. We'll discuss why we didn't in a brief second here.
Okay. Tier 2, Villanova 6. This is my last second swap. I had Providence at 6. I changed it to Villanova. We'll discuss why. Providence is 7, Butler 8, and Seton Hall 9. These teams 6 through 9, they're like the exact same for me. There's not a lot of difference here. Maybe a little bit of drop off as you go down, but not much. And then Tier 3, it's DePaul and it's Georgetown. Again, two teams that I feel are pretty similar. I put DePaul ahead because I like DePaul better. I live in Chicago. Jim. I like DePaul better.
Oh, you're biased, Kai. You just see those play possess signs everywhere around the city, and you're totally influenced by marketing. You're a sheep. How dare you?
Exactly. Well, we'll talk about why we put DePaul above Georgetown. I think you're on board with that. Is that right?
I am. We're gonna explore it though. We're gonna give that a little autopsy on why we did that, and respond to maybe some of the passionate Georgetown fan takes as to why they are 11th versus 10th. So yeah, we'll discuss it.
Very good Georgetown representation in the Discord, by the way. So if you're a Georgetown fan, you got friends in there. All conference selections. Here we go. First team: Kadari Richmond from St. John's, Cam Jones from Marquette, Eric Dixon Villanova, Alex Caraban UConn, Ryan Kalkbrenner from Creighton. This feels like a lock of a top 5 for me for all conference.
Yeah, preseason it might be the easiest. Just if you're putting somebody else in there, you're doing it with a little bit of a hot take in mind.
Yep,
I would say.
Agreed. Second team: Aiden Mahaney from UConn, Ryan Conwell from Xavier, Bryce Hopkins from Providence, Pierre Brooks II from Butler. Yes, maybe a little surprise, maybe a little eye opener there. Zach Fremantle, Xavier, second team. Jim.
Best chance to crack the first team, probably a fully healthy Hopkins.
Yeah.
Or maybe fill the stat sheet Conwell. But yeah, it's probably Hopkins getting up there.
Agreed. And third team, which really you could just flop with the second team. I'd probably say, yeah, that's fine. Davon Smith from St. John's, Pop Isaacs from Creighton, Jameel Telfort from Butler, Liam McNeely, the freshman from UConn, and David Joplin from Marquette. Jim, did I leave anybody off?
I'd flop the 2 Butler guys. You said you wouldn't care if we flopped them.
So yeah, I would, yeah.
I just like the versatility over the kind of one-dimensional shooting. I didn't have anybody that is like egregious. You could go with 5 different UConn guys here. Pop Isaacs, I'm sure will get some resistance because he had a low true shooting percentage on super high usage at Texas Tech. We kind of think McDermott will fix him a little bit. And as you go down the standings, you can maybe pick out one guy like, oh, if I think Jaden Epps averages 22 points a game, maybe you shove him on there. But we also aren't fans of Georgetown in general. So I think it's fair. UConn guys, yeah, that's the one you can just slot in whoever you want.
I don't think I need to read the newcomer team, but I listed all 5 guys. They're on there. They've been mentioned. Player of the year, though, Ryan Kalkbrenner from Creighton is who I went with. You could say Cam Jones pretty easily. You could say Kadari Richmond easily. I think those are the top 3 candidates right now. But Kalkbrenner, he's going to win Defensive Player of the Year. It's not a bad way to go in the preseason.
Yeah, I think he's going to win his 4th. I believe he's 3-time Big East Defensive Player of the Year already. Maybe he's only won two and he's going to get his third. I can't remember exactly, but yeah, he's a freak. We'll talk about why when we get to Creighton. I'm gonna go Cam Jones,
Yeah, that's
Kai,
fine.
but I think any of those top three you feel pretty good about.
Coach of the Year had a really hard time with because it's kind of a weird award. It's like, do you give it to the first place guy? Do you give it to the overachiever? I went Rick Pitino. I think St. John's could finish top three in this league. If they do, I think Pitino probably gets a look at Coach of the Year. So Pitino, it was my ultimate pick there.
Patino for me because they're finishing second, Kai. Boom.
Whoa, second.
There's the
Wow.
take. Yes, sir.
It is a
Yep.
hot take indeed, Jim. Newcomer of the Year, Ryan Conwell from Xavier. We've been waxing poetically about him. We will continue. He is a great player. If he fails, boy, will we have egg on our face.
Yeah, we're gonna have to eat a whole bunch of whatever. It would be cold takes cold takes exposed if he stinks.
Okay, and then Liam McNeely, freshman of the year. He's the only freshman that cracked he cracked the newcomer team. Oh, sorry, third team for me, all conference. He has an opportunity. He might lead UConn in scoring, so it was an easy choice for me, freshman of the year.
He's awesome. That's all I have to add. Incredible shooter, smart player, good ball mover. Fits perfectly on a team that plays the way UConn does.
Indeed, he does, Jim. And speaking of, it's time to get into the previews, and let's start with UConn. So the Huskies, and I'm going to write down some timestamps for the video. The Huskies have the best staff in the country. They have the best game planners. Luke Murray, Kamani Young, in support of Dan Hurley. It's arguably the best program right now in college basketball, and maybe not even arguably. Should they be the hands-down favorite in the Big East? I think so. But once again, I will say, and I said this last year, so hands up, I don't think this is the same caliber of team as the year previous. A lot of talent. Caravan's underrated. They have some burgeoning sophomore talent that could be very, very, very good, like Solo Ball. The Mahaney/Reed duo, a bit due for development at their previous stops. They kind of disappointed. Michigan for Reed, Mahaney for St. Mary's. Can they develop under UConn? And then McNeely, the star freshman. There's a lot to like about this team, Jim. Number one for me.
Yeah, it's not like all set in stone where like, okay, this is the clear top five, and then you got to figure out the bench. Like there are roles to sort out here. And Ball and Jalen Stewart were not overly productive in their minutes last year, but I think it's because last year's team had such a clearly defined pecking order. Like Cam Spencer is the shooter running off screens. Tristan Newton is the playmaker, late shot clock guy. This year they've got to figure some of that out, but like you said, they have the best staff in the country to help figure it out, get them sorted out. Fun fact, Samson Johnson, 5th in the country in dunks last year, despite only playing 16 minutes a game. That is absurd. It's theoretically possible he could dunk more than Zach Edey did last year, which he had like 120. I think second place was 80. So Johnson's going to be all over the place on the offensive glass. I like him a little more than Reed. Kai, do you care between those two, which guy plays more minutes? Does that affect your outlook on the team?
No, not really. I could see Reed playing more, but it does not affect my outlook. My more concern is Jara playing point guard full-time, Jim. I think that is a bit... I know he won 6th man of the year last year in the Big East. We still don't think he's that great. He had a better year, for sure, but he's no Tristan Newton or Cam Spencer.
Yeah, his junior year, he couldn't make a single shot. He was throwing up bricks, and I think it's worthwhile saying point guard is somewhat of a concern. I think UConn fans are high on Ahmad Noel, the freshman coming in, who, are you going to get 2 freshmen in a Dan Hurley rotation? That seems a little questionable, but I think back to 2 years ago when they won their first title and they recruited a bunch of different guys out of the portal. You had Diarra coming in, you had Joey Calcaterra. They went a little harder on depth in the portal that year. The fact that they didn't, when they're the 2-time national champ and can probably pull out whoever they want from there, tells me they feel pretty decent about what they've got in-house. And so with Noel, with Ball, with Stewart, I think we'll see the development or instant impact from those guys that perhaps if they didn't feel good about that, they would have pulled in a couple more portal names.
Is this the final year of Luke Murray and Kamani Young on the staff?
If they win a 3rd straight title, no, because it just throws off the timeline of everyone's search. If teams fire their guy March 10th and UConn's not done playing until April 8th, it's a little tougher to entice those guys away. And at this point, they're not going to leave for any mid-major job. It's got to be one they really like, or the high major type Baylor/Arizona coming in for an assistant, Tommy Lloyd, Jerome Tang. like Kansas State, excuse me, for Tang. So I think one of them will leave because I don't think they're going to win a national title. But man, they could just continue being that super powerhouse of a staff there in Stores.
Indeed, it was Dan Hurley's greatest feat in the transfer portal this offseason was keeping his coaching staff. Okay, that's UConn, number one for both of us. No disagreements there. I'm going to go to my number two, which is Creighton. And Jim has already spoiled it. He does not have Creighton number two. He is picking St. John's. Hooray, hurrah. Creighton for me, yeah, Kalkbrenner and Stephen Ashworth. Fantastic duo. Love when you bring your bookends back, your point guard and your center. This defense cannot be bad with Kalkbrenner. Jim mentioned how many times he's won Defensive Player of the Year. Since he's gotten there, Creighton's had basically their best defensive season every single year. He literally is a one-man wrecking crew. Now, I have some questions about the ads. I'll admit, Jemiah Neal, Pop Isaacs, they're weird ads. They can score. Can they shoot? And bringing in non-shooters, Jim, surprised me from McDermott, those two guys.
Yeah, I need him to walk me through like a 30-minute deck on why he brought in Jemiah Neal. I don't get it. He's not like ultra disruptive defensively. He doesn't get to the rim with frequency. He hasn't made 30% of his threes in a single season yet this year. I don't get it. I mean, there's physical tools and maybe he helps on ball defense a little bit. And that's important when you're playing the hyper drop coverage that they do. But yeah, that one's a little odd. I have a little more faith in Isaacs becoming a true offensive force for them. He struggled a little bit at Texas Tech in a mega high usage, but I think his usage will go down here. Find a little more efficiency that way. I think they'll get him better shots. But really, yeah, your Creighton opinion just comes down to Kalkbrenner establishing such a high floor. Defensively, last year, Kai, the opponent shot less than 50% at the rim when he was on the floor. At the rim.
That's pretty good.
A foot away, 2 feet away from the basket, they shot less than 50%. When he sat, it went up over 60%. Like it's just an incredible swing. Frederick King is not a waste of space, but considering what Kalkbrenner is, that's massive, that difference. And one of Kalkbrenner's best stats is he doesn't foul. He gets to play 30 to 35 minutes every game because he's one of the best verticality guys in the country. Beyond the concerns you mentioned with the newcomers, offensively, they need Zugic. I think the European transfer to come in to lift their ceiling. His eligibility is a little in question, might get suspended for a couple games. And then they're really easy to play against defensively. Last in the country in turnover rate, number one in foul rate. Like they just don't do things to make you uncomfortable. They're basically playing a math game. Say like, all right, you're going to shoot from mid-range. We're probably going to let you. And if you make those shots, then our defense is in trouble. And that just, I think, hurts them when they play top competition.
Yeah, it's kind of a rinse, wash, repeat in terms of that. It's like you are not scoring at the rim with Kalkbrenner, but you might hit some jump shots, and we think we're going to hit more. Like we said, though, shooting is a little bit down compared to normal McDermott teams. If you look back at his history, it's no surprise, his worst teams have been when his teams can't shoot. And Zugic is a huge addition. His tape really does look good. Movement shooter is like his archetype, I would say. It looks good. The form is really good, and he really is impressive. Maybe he plays way more than Neal, and that would be good for Creighton's offense, frankly. They need some of the freshmen to do good. Jackson McAndrew, top 40 guy, comes in. He looks pretty good on film. Typical Creighton stretch guy. Another guy, Larry Johnson. Nobody named Larry Johnson in history. He's coming in, a top 100 4-star as well. I think they have a little bit better depth than last season. But yeah, the shooting, the Neal Isaacs combination worries me just a little bit. We didn't even mention Mason Miller. He could, have a bit of a breakout year in his third season.
Someday he'll put on weight, Kai. Someday. I mean, I know he weighs more than he did when he arrived, but he is still kind of a stick figure for them. Mm-hmm. Great shooter, but doesn't really bring much else.
Unfortunately, no. Loved his dad, though, in college. Loved his dad. Oh, yeah. That is Creighton. My number 2, Jim's number
3. 3 for me.
Okay, good. So we're not too far off there. Marquette is my number 3. I assume it's your number
5.
5, behind Xavier. Okay. So we flip-flopped kind of Marquette, St. John's, kind of. Lots of continuity. Marquette, that's very clutch in this era. It's basically, of the power schools, I think it was Marquette and Purdue that pretty much kept most of their guys, ironically, because they both lost stars. Marquette loses Kolek and Ighodaro, two of the best players in the country from a regular perspective, from an on-off perspective, from really however you want to categorize it. They were huge losses, but you have Cam Jones back, Jim's Player of the Year in the Big East. He's an All-American this season. The Ross, Gold, Owens, Lowry potential is high. Any and all of these guys can break out. There's a lot of upside. Shock has done a really good job developing players. Owens is getting a ton of hype this offseason. He is a freshman coming in, something he will start right away. Question marks? Yeah, we would have liked him to get one more transfer, Jim. That would have maybe helped the talent level a little bit. We know that Shaka likes to develop, but maybe one transfer would have helped. Hey, Kolek, he was a transfer. And then Stevie Mitchell, full-time point guard. There are some Marquette fans that like Stevie Mitchell a lot, but full-time point guard, if he's not, by the way, it's Cam Jones, which I prefer him off the ball. Is that a bit of an issue as well?
Yeah, I would have liked to see one ball handler come in via the portal. That's kind of the thing I would have wanted, with Sean Jones probably out for the season off that torn ACL. It sounds like the recovery is not imminent coming back this year, and they don't want to burn the year in like February if he's coming back. Jones was an absolute monster in the games Kolek was out, averaged like 21, 5, and 4 on 50% shooting, 45% from three. He is a one-man offense, and you add in Gold as the stretch five. Joplin is a shooter that spaces the floor and opens up driving lanes. I totally see the vision offensively, but on defense, Gold is your anchor. Like when Oso sat and Gold played last year, they gave up like 60% at the rim. It's kind of the opposite of the Kalk effect. They don't have that physical presence at center. Oso is much better about that. Jones isn't a great defender. Joplin's not a great athlete / defender on the wing. So it's a lot of Ross, a lot of Mitchell. They'll have good ball pressure, but beyond that, I don't know if they have that kind of reinforcement. That's where I get worried, is their defense. And it was 10 points worse overall when Gold was the anchor. That just scares me, Kai. So I think the offense is going to be inflammatory, just completely impossible to stop with Jones as the lead guy. That's why I have him as Player of the Year. But I think the defense might be kind of limiting for them.
Yeah, offense could definitely be, top 10 in the country. They're 21st last year, 17th in defense, pretty balanced team. Shock has had a top 10 offense before. It was 2 years ago. And this team, and that team, by the way, their fingerprints, O rating, D rating, 7th, 43rd on defense. Maybe you see the defense a little bit farther than that, maybe like a outside of the top 50 sort of thing. But offensively, they will be so good. I still think this is a top 3 team in the conference. I put them over Xavier because I trust them a little bit more. There's more certainty, I will say. Even though you project the in-house guys a little bit, I think there's a little bit more certainty in terms of what we know we're getting on the court versus Xavier, which is a little bit based on projection. And that's our segue, Jim, to go to Xavier. Both of us have them 4th. This is the sexy team of, I will say, the offseason for the Big East. The hype has gotten a little bit out of control for me. I feel like we were at the forefront of this, Jim. I'm giving us credit here. We were like, Xavier, hell yeah. Ryan Conwell, a star, in my opinion, coming from Indiana State. But I'm seeing top 10 love. I'm seeing national title love. Our buddy Matt ranked him like 10th. I can't get there yet. There's too many question marks. You need several guys to translate. Not only Conwell, but Marcus Foster, Maddox coming over from Toledo, even Hughley coming over from Pitt / Oklahoma. You still have a very injury-prone team. Fremantle's coming off injury. Jerome Hunter's coming off injury. Cameron Fletcher's coming off injury. I mean, there's a lot of guys that have question marks there. So I just think it's gotten a little bit out of hand, the love for Xavier. Still a top 4 team for me in the Big East. What say you?
Yeah, 4th as well. You can't spell sexy without X, Kai. That's Xavier this offseason. It's just so easy to look at this team on paper and be like, oh my God, look at all the scoring threats in the backcourt. If Fremantle is healthy, which it sounds like he is, you have a dominant front court scorer that can also space the floor. You go 5 out a little bit. Whoa, how do you guard them? And then you're like, wait a second. If I'm going to talk about Marquette's defense, I got to talk about Xavier's defense. Yes. They could be bad on that end. They could be like Sean Miller's first team. That was a Sweet 16 team. And they ended up 64th on defense. But I think during the year, they were down around like 90th and tightened up late. There's a chance they have similar issues this year. Not a ton of rim protection. Hughley can be taken advantage of in space. He's one of those productive per minute guys, Kai, that has some flaws underlying his game that don't show up in statistics. But he does seem to be in better shape. We've seen some photos of that. That is important. And man, the backcourt is good. McKnight is the 5th-year floor general with his 2nd season in the Big East. That's typically what, Sean Miller's getting these grad transfer guys to come in, and they've only got 1 year to play in a system. And Olivari looks great, and Sule Boom looks great, but it's nice to have McKnight for a 2nd season. Really big fan of Conwell. Foster gives him a little bit of a more size on the wing. Great rebounder that they don't really have in the backcourt. Maddox can shoot the rock. There's so much to love about the offense, but I do have to hesitate on defense and see if there's enough ball pressure and switchability on the wing, which there almost is none of unless what's his name that I'm forgetting? The big
Trey
wing.
Green, Dalen Swain.
Swain's the one who's like the connective piece. The only guy with real true defensive versatility on this roster. Need him to be an important piece. But at 4th, it could be like 5th on offense and 100th on defense.
I agree. And Miller, he brought in guys that thrive in transition. Conwell, Foster, Maddox, these guys thrive in transition. That's perfect for their offense. Defensively, there's major question marks. Marcus Foster, in my opinion, not a guarantee to translate. I mentioned his stats against tier A and B competition in my preview. It's not great. And Furman was a good team. And Marcus Foster, while they suffered when he was out, I don't think it was promising to see him struggle against better competition. Now, granted, he's not going to be in a star role in this team, but it's still basically saying it's not a guarantee that they translate. That all these guys translate would be surprising to me. That some of them do, most likely that happens, and that's good enough, I think, for a top 5 finish in the Big East.
Yeah, I've laughed a little at all the Xavier fans like hating Abu Usman from last year, and now they're like, but now we got Lassina Traore. It's like,
right.
They're really similar players.
Very
they're like
similar.
The same size, similar finishers inside. Traore is on a worse team than Usman was. The big difference is Traore is a much better defensive rebounder, and I think that was some of the complaints about Usman last year was that he wasn't a great anchor there, and he had to play bigger minutes than expected because of their injuries. But if Traore is playing 15 minutes a game, he helps that defensive rebounding, which dropped off big time last year because of the youth and international that they had to play up front.
Yeah, he is a beast on the boards. If we're going to talk defense, he's a fantastic rebounder. They brought in from Long Beach. Okay, number 5 for me is St. John's. Jim said number 2 for him. He's buying the Johnnies. He's buying the upside. I am too. I'm buying the upside. I can see them finishing that high, Jim. Rick Pitino, this team will be great on defense. It was not last season up to Pitino's standards. I think it's way improved. He got his guys coming in. He got Richmond coming in. I love the Aaron Scott edition, the Davon Smith edition. These are guys he's getting that I call them, these are Pitino guys. Guys that he wants in the program, unlike last year when he kind of cleaned house. Wasn't too happy with what he was getting on the roster. He has a long perimeter now. The shooting is a little bit of a concern. You need Aaron Scott to deliver there. You need Davon Smith not to be a fluke. He shot 40% last year. We've noted how good he shot in Pac-12 tournament play. You need RJ Lewis to improve. He shot like 20% from 3. That's not good. We know Richmond's not really a factor from there. Wilcher and Dunlap off the bench need to improve as well. The depth is a little thin if I'm going to pick nits at this roster, but I still really like them. Kadari Richmond, in my opinion, a dark horse player of the year nationally candidate.
Oh, love that, Kai. Yeah, I mean, if they ascend up to top 10-ish in the country and Richmond has his monster jack of all trades, playmaking, scoring, defense combination, sure, he could get there. The biggest thing for them is like you said, defense. Pitino is a mastermind on that end. He had top 10 defense after top 10 defense at Louisville. And I think this roster sets up for that. I think I beat the drum for the defense last year, and they obviously did not deliver, but they've got a little bit better, I think, better mobile shot blocking. Soriano was big, and they were number 1 in the Big East in shot blocking last year, but they're more mobile in the front court, and Aaron Scott is so much better than Chris Ledlum at that 4 spot. The versatility, that's huge. You got more length in the backcourt, as you mentioned. Jordan Dingle is not a good defensive player. Jenkins wasn't an awesome defensive player. Now they could be just elite on that end. Offensively, yes, could be a little cramped at times, could look ugly. They're going to have to play in transition, score off of turnovers at times, and they've got guys that generate steals. Lewis, Richmond, Smith, those guys generate some mayhem defensively. And I think they'll feed off of that. Half court, you could see some droughts. It could look a little wonky, but you can stagger Smith and Richmond and have an awesome playmaker on the court at every single minute of the game. I think Pitino finds a way to make it work well enough defensive or offensively that the defense can carry them. That's why I have them top 3.
Transition indeed, Jim. Yes, they will create tons of that in the open floor. Davon Smith and Richmond together. I love the dual point guard look. And both guys were amongst like the top X in assists per game last year in the country. Both guys can facilitate. This might be the best rebounding duo in the country in the backcourt. Combined average 13 rebounds per game. That's pretty unheard of for a guard tandem. So I think St. John's going to be really, really tough on the glass as well, in addition to better on defense, in addition to a transition nightmare. I see the upside. It's there.
Yep. Even with some odd spacing, those two are going to get a million paint touches a game too, because they can just beat their guys with quickness and length. They're just going to live in the lane and find ways to, they'll probably dominate the offensive glass. I love Zuby. I think Zuby Ejiofor is a great, like, per minute monster that's going to thrive stepping up into a bigger role. So yeah, I think they find ways to make it work.
Yeah, Zuby, former top 50-ish recruit at Kansas. I mean, he's got the pedigree. Yeah, lots to like about St. John's. That's tier 1. Now we get into the weeds a little bit, we'll say. This is where it becomes a little bit of a choose your adventure. I think the top 5, most would agree that that's the top 5 in the Big East. 6 through 9, I've seen several different people say who they feel should be. For me, I switched it. I had Providence there. I switched it to Villanova. Kind of like Xavier, but opposite. The hate has gone a little too far for me on Villanova. This isn't like DePaul, Georgetown roster level. This team still has talent. Eric Dixon is a first-team all-conference guy, one of the best players in the league. Wugo Poplar coming in kind of saved the roster. I don't love him necessarily, but he's a competent Power 5 starter, a guy with a ton of potential still. Jameer Brickus, kind of meh for me, point guard coming from LaSalle. He's old, though, and he can shoot, and I think he's pretty steady in the grand scheme of things. The question is, Kyle Neptune. You had a roster last season that was top 10 in the country by most people's standards, and they underperformed. Can he get the most out of this roster, which is definitely down? He doesn't need a big bench, but depth is concerning. He has to rely on Tyler Perkins from Penn, 2 freshmen who look good, by the way. Hodge and Mosley both look good on film. We'll see if they can deliver. Jim, your thoughts on Nova?
Yeah, I'm with you that the hate's gone a little far. I think people just got so frustrated with them not living up to the roster last year that they're like, oh, they're going to so wildly underperform that it gets Neptune fired. And maybe that happens, but they finished top 40 in KenPom last year. It's not like they sank to 70th and just completely wasted every single ounce of talent. They had some huge, huge wins early in the year. I mean, after Atlantis, it was like, yes, this team is really good. They won Atlantis. They beat UNC, an eventual 1 seed in OT. And then they come back and kind of laid 3 eggs and struggled in the Big 5. They had the Penn loss. They lost to Drexel. It was a weird team, really weirdly up and down. And offensively, they kind of play robotic. I think our guy Kyle B in the Discord said that, and that's what they look like to me. They're thinking a little too much as opposed to Jay Wright. They had more read and react. They seemed more comfortable. Talent-wise, the roster is down from last year, but I like the top 5 or 6. I too. Dixon, Poplar, Brickus, Longino's a really nice, like, switchy wing. It makes sense to me. Defensively, they'll drop off a little because they're not as switchable. Brickus is smaller. They're going to be young off the bench. But I think the philosophy is right. They keep you away from the rim. They play very tight, compact. They're not gambling for steals, and I think they'll continue to do that, and that works for them. But yeah, it's not as high an upside as last year's team had, as certainly has a lower floor. If last year's roster was 37th, maybe this one's going to finish 55th or something, which puts them right in that 6th through 9th group that they were, like, Xavier and Providence were all in last year.
Yeah, I think that's their fate. And Neptune, great defensive coach, top 15 last year in defense, and he had a top 40-ish defensive team at Fordham. He's a defensive coach. I don't think they'll drop off too much. And I want to mention Enoch Bakke. This is the first rim protector, shot blocker Villanova's had in a long, long time. Like as long as I can remember. He might be
Coach Shefu, maybe?
Yeah, like shot blocking, purely shot blocking. I think that's huge. And Dixon, say what you will about defensively moving down to the 4, him moving down on the floor on offense, I think could be really, really good for this team. So I kind of think they're going to be stable-ish and be in that middle of the pack. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. The hate has gone too far.
Yeah, yeah, they're competent. They're not. I don't think they're going to be a disaster.
Competent is a good way to put it. Yeah, we'll say that. Providence, though, number 7. Providence to me goes several different ways, and I've cooled on this roster since the beginning. I know I'm going to get hate for that, Jim, and of course it's me and Jim talking about Providence. Yes. The Mizzou fans, blah blah blah. Kim English. Defensively, they should be really good still, and we've consistently said that English is a great defensive coach. He's never had a top 100 offense in 3 seasons, and you lose Devin Carter and you lose Josh Oduro. That's huge. You're going to rely on Wesley Cardette to be your guy. I think that's a huge, huge red flag. He was great at Chicago State. Okay, fine. Jar, I call him, Abdur-Rahim. A known commodity, solid. Not fantastic, not elite. Bryce Hopkins, can he get back to himself? He's coming off injury. And Chris Essendoko, Jim, I don't love the vibes I'm getting from St. Joe's fans and the hints from the staff. It was very clear that they were worse with him on the floor than Rasheer Fleming. And I think he's been a little bit overrated in this offseason cycle.
Yeah, I don't like him. I'll just come out and say it. I'm not a Essendoko fan, not a fan of his game. He's like the 7'2", 250-pound shooter, which that's what they're looking for, and what they made a very big point to get in the offseason was shot makers. They didn't have many of them last year. Their complementary guys couldn't keep space around Oduro and around Carter, and that was a problem. So they bring in Abdur-Rahim, a proven shooter. Bensley Joseph, a proven shooter. Cardette's the one that's supposed to rise into more playmaking. Like you said, he and Pierre are going to shoulder the load as perimeter scorers. I sort of see it, but I think you've kind of got to squint and be looking at it through rose-colored glasses to say, okay, Cardette's going to be a 16-point-a-game guy in this conference, playing against much, much better defenders. And I know people cite the Northwestern game last year. Northwestern wasn't a very good defensive team. They didn't have an awesome, big, athletic defensive wing. Like if they're throwing Barnheiser or Ty Berry at him, that's a guy you can score on. So I'm not going to totally put major stock in that. But I do think what English did this offseason is smart, trying to attack the weaknesses of last year's team, the shot making, while not fully sacrificing size. You know, Abdur-Rahim's big. Cardette is a big wing. They've got some length and athleticism on the roster. They're 6th for me, Kai. Probably the closest to cracking the top 5, but not all that close. The offense has a little bit of limitations despite the addition of the shooting, and the defense won't be quite as good as last season, especially if they're trying to play Essendoko a lot of minutes. He is not mobile. I know they love Oswin and Bonke. They're real high on their whole center rotation. Yeah. I think that's a little more projection than actual production.
Agreed. Should mention, Jaden Pierre does have a lot of upside. He kind of takes over the full-time point guard mantle. I do think he's a pretty good player. I'll give him that. Hopkins, at his peak, is one of the best players in the Big East and even the country. I just worry about him coming off the ACL. But like a guy like Bensley Joseph, come on. The Miami team was bad last year when he was a starter. I know he was on the Final Four team, but he wasn't a major piece. Rich Barron, I'll say it right now, there's no way this guy shoots 43% from 3 again. That was a fluke. But he is a nice bench piece to have in terms of just wing versatility and shooting. I just don't. I guess I don't see the upside with this group as much as others, but we'll see. I think the defensive floor is there, high floor, and I think they're not in danger of going all the way down to like a 9 or a 10, for instance.
Yeah, really, kind of a narrow range. A little bit, yeah, a little bit more upside if Hopkins is true, absolute holy crap Bryce Hopkins, but he's not even going to play the first couple games. It sounds like they're going to try to ramp him up for their MTE, and that concerns me. Like, it's not like he's fully healthy all the way through practice right now through preseason. It's figuring it out as the season goes, and maybe that means they're playing their best ball come March, as everybody wants to do. But I think it's still a little bit of a concern.
Jim, what was Ed Cooley's average finish at Providence in KenPom?
I will guess 53rd.
It was 59. What was Providence last year?
59.
59.
that I do know.
Incredible yes. Consistency for this program. Okay, Butler, number 8, moving on. I like this team a little bit more. The more I look at them, Telfort and Brooks coming back is huge. Both all Big East caliber wings, both versatile. Both will handle the ball quite a bit. Point guard play, maybe a little bit of a question mark here. Again, team that can jump to 6 for me. The Patrick McCaffrey ad was fine for me. I think he adds a little something offensively. He's not quite as good as some other gets in the conference. Colby King is probably the key, we'll say. He's a point guard coming over from Tulane. Again, not a great ad, and that's why I said Telfort needs to handle the ball probably a lot. Can he give him anything at the point? Can he help make up for the loss of Davis, who was a huge loss? I'm not even mentioning Posh, but DJ Davis is a big, big, big loss for Xavier. Finley Bizjack, breakout year. Jamie Kaiser, former top 50-ish recruit from Maryland, breakout year. It's possible. There's a little bit of upside on this team. I think Thad Matta is kind of finding his stride. He is a good coach. They just don't have enough oomph for me, Jim, to get over this 8th place preseason prediction, we'll say.
Yeah, Kai, I mentioned my love for Telford in the L Conference area. He's so versatile, can be kind of a point guard. He can be a mid-post playmaker. He can guard a bunch of different positions. I'm a big, big fan of his. Brooks can shoot from anywhere. You've got to have a guy glued to him at all times. Jameel Telfort, Kai, sounds like Jordan Belfort. Uh-huh. And I think their transfers are penny stocks. That's basically what they're gambling on with Colby King, with Jamie Kaiser, with Patrick McCaffrey, like guys that were not that great last year, but have a chance to be better. Colby King originally a St. John's recruit, and Ron Hunter raved about him last preseason, said he was the fastest guy he'd ever coached. Whoa. But he was playing with a bunch of 5th-year like Forbes with Cross. Those guys took a lot of possessions. They played that weird zone, and I don't think King could fully take advantage of his speed there. Kaiser was supposed to be a lights out shooter, and he was part of the problem of Maryland not being able to shoot. McCaffrey's here because I believe his brother Connor is on staff, and they have a good right. Family has a good relationship with Mata. I don't know. I think Bizjack has to be a lot better. I watched the best game of his season last year, so I know that he can be good, but that's the risk with smaller sample size and watching a team. They will be steady. Upside, I'm not fully buying, but they will be in the tangle for 6th, then that's a tournament spot. I think that the 6th best team in the Big East will be dancing this year, unlike this past season when they only got 3. So they will be in the mix for it.
Another team with narrow range, in my opinion. They're not going to be horrible. They're not going to be great. Landon Moore is the most whatever player in the world in the Big East. Every time he got on the court last year, I was like, why are we playing this guy? And he somehow would score a little bit, but he's not a great option. Their depth after Andre Screen at the 5 is concerning. Bowden Kapke, I think people actually like on Butler, but I'm not really going to give many props there for him. So that's a little bit concerning as well.
Landon Moore's a human shrug emoji. He's just like, all right, I guess he'll play him some minutes. Fine, go ahead.
He just doesn't look like he should be a Division I basketball player, and yet he plays for Butler. Hey, he's way better than I ever was.
He belonged at St. Francis, Pennsylvania. Exactly. He was a Red Flash, and that was his destiny.
Exactly. You can take the guy out of the Red Flash. You can't take the Red Flash out of the guy. That's what we're going with. Okay, Seton Hall, number 9. They were picked 9th last year in the preseason by the media poll. I think there's a little bit of hindsight being done on Seton Hall last season with the fact they won the NIT, with the fact that all these players looked good at the end of the year. This team was not thought to be good heading into last season. People were very worried about the roster. Shaheen Holloway, in my opinion, did more with less, and that's what he does at every single stop he's been to. St. Peter's Elite 8 speaks for itself. I don't care that it got kind of lucky. He is a floor raiser. He's a great defensive coach. I think Seton Hall will still be good defensively. The problem is their star power is lacking. The talent overall in this roster is lacking. The rim protection's lacking. That really concerns me. Yassine Toomey from Evansville playing the 5 is going to be really weird. Shaw always has something of a rim protector. I don't think he has one in this roster. The silver lining, Jim, if you're really going to squint and look for like hope, it's the sophomores coming in. It's Scotty Middleton. It's Garwi Dual. It's Zion Harmon, who's a junior, but he was a top 100 recruit. Eye test for these guys is not great, but they all have potential, and you'll see a flash every now and then last year you can point to and saying, okay, maybe they'll improve.
Yeah, I'm very much with you on the kind of altered version of what happened last year. Like they were picked ninth in the Big East last year, and people were like they're lacking talent
Yep.
compared to the rest of the conference. People liked Richmond, but all right, Adai is coming from St. John's that wasn't that good. Like Dre Davis is solid, but we don't know what we got with Alamir Dawes. Bediako is a bad get at center. Like that was very much said last year. And then Bediako was a dominant 22, 25 minute a game guy that everybody loved and was one of the best gets in the portal. I think they've got, I mentioned penny stocks with Butler. They've got kind of that here. And that's what both Butler and Seton Hall had to do because of their NIL situations is they had to take some gambles. And Seton Hall has a lot of gambles, but that's good. You have bites at the apple. You don't need all these guys to be really good right away. You just need two of Jenkins, Harmon, and Duval to be useful. You need one of Jenkins and Middleton and Oligbe or two of that group. And at center, that's the question mark. I'm glad you highlighted rim protection because all of his great defenses had Casey and Defo, and then last year they dropped off a little bit, having more of a ground bound in Bediako, but not as bouncy kind of a shot blocker. Now it's really kind of bleak at center. Gus Yalden can't jump. Toomey is not a Big East caliber center. Of course, we didn't think Bediako was either, but the defense, it takes a little bit of a hit, but I think they've got enough upside. I think Coleman was fantastic to my eye test in the games I watched. He's got real breakout potential into a bigger role. But yeah, it's kind of they're going to hit ceiling because the overall talent isn't super high, but 6th or 9th, they can absolutely be in the mix. Winning the NIT was, I think, an accomplishment for a team picked 9th in the Big East last year. And if they're winning the NIT or in the bubble mix again, that's a really good achievement for Holloway.
I agree. I mean, we talked about rim protection. The rest of the roster, the perimeter size is again huge. Like for Holloway, he loves to do that. Garvey, I think it's a V, like he pronounces it, Garvey. Apparently he's been promised point guard minutes, which is fine. But 6'5" point guard, hey, that's familiar, right? They had Richmond last season. Adaiwusu is big. Coleman, 6'5". Middleton is 6'7", playing on the wing. Chauncey Jenkins is pretty big from Old Dominion. So they still have a lot of perimeter size, which I think will drive their defense. The problem is the rim protection. We worry about Toomey, who, by the way, is pretty skilled offensively. I just don't see him as a defensive piece. And coming from Evansville, they had a good year for Evansville. It's just not up to caliber. Okay, that does it for Tier 2. And now, of course, we move to the bottom tier. It's DePaul and it's Georgetown. I have these teams very close together. I went with DePaul. Chris Holtmann was hired in the offseason. He's arguably DePaul's best coach since like Ray Meyer and Ray Meyer's son. So it's been decades since they've had this good of a coach. Is he an elite coach in the national scale? No. He was fired from Ohio State. Maybe unfairly, maybe fairly, whatever you want to decide. But he is a significant upgrade over Stubblefield. The transfers he got, look, they're not great. They're mid-majory for sure, but they all have one thing in common. They can shoot. He literally said, I'm going to go get a bunch of shooters, and I'm going to put them on the floor. I think that is so smart. And he has a lot of pockets of upside, some swing, some laden blocker, a former top 50 recruit coming in who has done nothing yet, but he could be a major piece. Jacob Meyer from Coastal Carolina was awesome for Coastal Carolina. Maybe he's really good at this level. Rivers, Skogman, proven mid-majors. So, Jim, I like what Holtmann did with his resources, we'll say, to bring in.
Yeah, he got some sophomore gambles, like you said. Blocker, Meyer, David Thomas at Mercer was awesome down the stretch. He was like the star high-usage guy for them. Guys that can potentially get into the paint, get your paint touches and kick out to the shooters where they have a ton of them. Rivera, Skogman, Enright is kind of a MFer. We saw him live. Yes. Kai just makes plays and disturbs the opponent, kind of gets under your skin as an opposing fan, but he kind of adds a little bit in that way. Benson is the gamble. Like you need him to be good in the paint. Yeah. His stats are terrific, but he is a 6'8" center and in the Big East, that's going to be a little bit of a question. Skogman's more of a floor stretcher, skilled scorer, but he's legit good too. And Davidson kind of sank when he got hurt last year, which indicates his value. Yeah, it's like you said, the allocation of resources was smart. Find an identity, lean into it, get a couple penetrators, get a ton of shooting, Now we're going to talk defense with Georgetown. There is some real downside defensively here. They have
Yes.
a couple smaller guards. They don't have real rim protection outside of Benson. It's a skill over athleticism roster, and that could be a serious problem. But I think they'll play really conservatively. They're not going to try to overextend and gamble and stuff. And Holton hasn't been a great defensive coach, got that. But they will play smart, which will hopefully minimize the risk. And they're just going to be a high variance team. They're going to give up a lot of jumpers. They're going to take a lot of jumpers, and they think they can win some shooting contests against you. And I get it with the personnel they have.
Yes, very much lack athleticism. They will not be good defensively. Like you said, Holtman, not a great track record there with actual athletes. It's not going to be good this season. Offense can be good. I believe in the shooting. If you can shoot, you can hang around. A lot of teams have proven that over the years. Even in the Big East, I think DePaul will be kind of feisty in that regard. But yeah, I mean, he's got 4 transfers from the Missouri Valley. He's got Coastal Carolina transfer, Davidson. These are not like cream of the crop schools that he's pulling from. Blockers from Arkansas, he didn't play. CJ Gunn couldn't get on the floor for Indiana, and he can shoot. So that's a red flag in and of itself for a team that really needs shooting.
CJ Gunn's a shooter that can't shoot.
Yeah,
get that guy off. Stay off the floor, CJ.
So this roster, why they're 10th? We were like kind of raving about this team. They're 10th because they lack talent compared to the rest of the league. That's the long and short of it. But there's enough upside to keep them above Georgetown for me, Jim, for instance. And I think you too.
Yes, I do have DePaul narrowly ahead of Georgetown. We just go right into Georgetown. For me, it's defense concerns again. I mean, they were horrific beyond belief defensively last year. Like, tear your eyes out. Everything's a layup. No chance at guarding anything.
Worse than DePaul.
They were like the worst power conference defense I think I've ever seen. What, 321st, yep. I believe, in Ken Palm's. Yeah. Really bad. And I know Georgetown fans will say it was Jay Heath, Rowan Brumbaugh, and Supreme Cook as our rim protector. That's the reason we were bad. No, it was everybody. Everybody stunk on defense. Jaden Epps is not a good defender. Pairing him with a very thin but dynamic point guard and Mac makes sense offensively, but I think they're going to have real issues keeping the ball in front still. Mac might not be as bad as Brumbaugh or Heath, but I don't think he's some guy that's going to keep his guy in front at all times. And while the rim protection is better than Supreme Cook with Sorber coming in there, I still think it's going to be a problem with bad on-ball defenders and shaky rim protection. It won't be 321st, but if their defense is 150th, I'm not at all surprised.
I'm not even sure he can get there, to be honest. Malik Mack is not saving this team. I think pairing him with Epps is a disaster waiting to happen. These are 2 ball-dominant guards that need the ball in their hands and that expect to be high usage. And maybe that coexists in a different frame, but with the talent around them, I just don't like it whatsoever. I think Curtis Williams and Jordan Burks are just spraying praise, like getting them from the portal. I definitely like Burks better than Williams in terms of potential, but still concerning. Micah Peavy was a great transfer ad. Maybe their best one, maybe better than Mac. But why?
I love Peavy. Love Peavy.
But why on earth is he transferring here, Jim? Why would you leave TCU as a starter for Georgetown? It makes no sense to me. That's strange. That to me, and I'm going to speculate, so I have no idea. Could be for a better reason. That says I want a bigger role, and I don't want a guy coming in wanting a bigger role when I'm bringing in a ball-dominant point guard, and I have a guy coming back in Epps who's like a 25-30% usage guy. That concerns me a little bit. Again, I could be way off in that one.
Yeah, I double checked. I was like, wait, is Peavy from the DMV area? Right. Wants to play home? No, he's from Texas, Kai. So he's leaving home for this final year.
School?
Yeah, I don't know. It's confusing to me. I'm not sure what the identity of this team is. Besides, we have a lot of guys who want to slash and drive and get shots up, and it's not going to be a well-spaced floor. No. The way that we talked about with DePaul. That's the concern offensively. I think they're really high on Mulready, the young point guard. I think he's supposed to be a good defender.
Yes.
Like maybe he's the one that helps perimeter defense a little bit. Hopefully Curtis Williams doesn't play that much. I think he's bad. What do you say, Kai, to I think the big Georgetown response is we have 3 guys who would be DePaul's best player. I don't think that's incorrect. I think Epps, PV, Mac would probably all be DePaul's best player, but I like the fit of DePaul. I like I know what they're going to be good at and what they're going to be bad at. Georgetown, I think I don't know that the offense is going to be as functional as I believe DePaul's is, because they don't have front court spacing. They don't have great wing spacing. They just have a bunch of guys, like you said, that want the ball, that want to attack. I have some concerns that this is going to be a lot of my turn, your turn on offense.
I agree. And hey, I don't want to put 1 year on Cooley, but he looked checked out at the end of the year. Maybe that's because the roster was so bad, and I'll give him the benefit of the doubt because he has built 2 programs already in Fairfield and Providence, so I trust him. Georgetown fans will also say, Jim, they brought in a top 15 recruiting class. That's true. That surprised me. I didn't know it was that high. Sorber really does look good. The freshman center, they expect him to start. I do like him on film. Julius Hala-Ifonua is the other center they're bringing in. He's a bit of a classification as a unicorn, quote unquote, using such like loose terms for unicorn, in that he has size at 7 feet, he can handle, he can shoot. He's not at the same level as the real unicorns, but hey, there's potential, there's upside. And you mentioned Mulready, a guy I also kind of liked on film, but their bench is very young, it's unproven. Cooley played a lot of guys last year, he might have to this year. I just really don't like the talent and the fit of the roster.
Yeah, I'm kind of out on Hala-Ifonua at least this year. I think there's going to be a major adjustment period for him coming over. So sophomore year, yeah, I'll probably talk him up and he'll have a couple flashes and highlights this year that people will be like, look, you see how good this guy is. And then we'll look at his stats in the year and it's not going to be overly pretty. But yeah, I think that's what they should be doing, is playing Mulready, playing Sorber, plan for next year, because I don't think this is like a make the tournament caliber team. And to the top 15 recruiting class, sorry to bring up my own team, but so does Mizzou, and they're not going to play. It's a program class. It's a build class. It's not a top 3 recruiting class with a bunch of stars that are going to lead your team the way Rutgers has, or the way Kentucky or Arkansas have always had with Calipari now. It's a build class. It's one that eventually ends up leading your team as juniors and seniors. I don't think they immediately turn the program around. So it's the vision is, and it's very forward looking for Cooley, and he's trying to build internally instead of just, stopgap portal stuff, which I sort of get. Like a lot of the guys besides PV have years left, but it's a majorly young team with defensive concerns, and that really hurts for me.
Agreed. And that's the Big East. How many tournament teams this year, Jim? They got 3 last year. What?
Yeah, no chance it's 3. I will say 6.
Okay.
I need to go through a full bracketology because I sort of want to say 7. It feels like half of 6 through 9 could get there,
Yep.
But maybe 7 is a lot for an 11-team conference. So I'll go with 6.
I'll also say 6. One of those tier 2 teams is getting in, Jim. Top 5 is pretty locky, in my opinion, at least in the preseason here.
Of the top 5, who would you be least surprised by them missing the tournament? Xavier. We're gonna get in trouble with one fan base here.
Xavier.
Yeah, I think it is Xavier. There's a little bit of unpredictability and defensive concerns, injuries, absolutely. Yep. So yeah, okay, yep. We're in agreement there.
That's the team that falls. Yeah, if there is one, unfortunately.
We don't think they're going to.
We don't think they're going
yell
to.
At us, Musketeers.
Love
That's
Xavier.
just if we had to. That's gun to head questions right there.
Yes. Okay, that does it. Thank you for joining us.
Do you have any reviews?
Oh, no reviews. No reviews this week.
No reviews? Okay.
Leave us reviews. Maybe I'm just not checking the right spot. Could be.
Idiot. It's your fault.
It is my fault. Okay, next week we're back with another conference preview. Again, check out theburnerexclusives.com. Instructions on how to sign up are in there. Link in the YouTube channel and the podcast feed. See you next time for another conference. Matt will be here. Till then, be good. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy college football.